Good morning, viewers. Today we are going to be looking at a new opening which is called the odd Benoni. So if you do not know what to play against the London system, this would be the right place for you. So the opening starts when white plays pawn to d4 and then we push our pawn to c5. So the move pawn to c5 will actually take your opponents out of their comfort zone. We'll be looking at what to do when our opponents captures the pawn and try to hang on to that pawn. We'll be also looking at a variation if white pushes his pawn to d5. I will be looking also at a game which I played at a recent tournament in this opening. So let's quickly explore the opening. So when white pushes pawn to d4, we push our pawn to c5. So if white takes the pawn on c5, we just push our pawn to e6, and now we are attacking the pawn, which is actually difficult to defend. Let's say if white tries to defend the pawn by pushing the pawn to b4, we immediately strike with a5. If they capture on a5, now the pawn on c5 is weak. We can just take with our bishop on c5 and black would be doing okay in that position. Alright, let's say they try to hang on by pushing the pawn to a3. Now we can simply take on b4 and white cannot recapture because we can just take the rook on a1. Alright, let's look at another variation. Let's say they try to defend the pawn in this way. We can simply take on b4, and if white recaptures, now we can simply play queen to f6, and white would be facing a lot of challenges in that diagonal. So the only reasonable way in which white can try to defend against this is to give away the knight, and we can take with check. If they block, now we can play our queen to b2, and we are threatening to capture on a2 on the next move. So black would be doing fine in that position. Alright, let's explore another new line. Alright, in this position, let's say white tries to defend the pawn by playing bishop to e3. Firstly, this move is not that great for white because this bishop is actually on an awkward square. He's blocking his own pawn from advancing. So which means white is going to have to develop the bishop by pushing g3 and then playing bishop to g2. In this case, white is not even defending the pawn because we can simply play knight to a6 and we are attacking that pawn, which is difficult to defend. We're gonna capture the pawn on the next move. If white tries to push b4, we can simply capture with the knight. If they continue, let's say with normal development like knight to f3, we can simply capture with the bishop or with the knight, and black is doing fine in that position. Alright, let's explore another line. So after pawn to d4, we push our pawn to c5. If white advances his pawn to d5, we can simply push our pawn to e5, right? So now white has got two options. They can push their pawn to e4, or they can take in percent in this position. If they take in percent, now we can take with the f pawn, and black is going to be having a nice center, so black would be doing fine in this position. All right, let's go back in this position. If white plays pawn to e4, we can simply play pawn to d6. If white plays that, now we can develop our knight with tempo, forcing white to defend with the bishop, and we can simply fianchetto our bishop on g7. Let's say white plays that move, we play bishop to g7. Let's say after castles, we castle. You can see this structure on the center is characterized with a closed center. So this structure looks like the same structure which arises after playing the king's Indian defense. So our plan would be to maneuver our knight either to h5 or to e8, and we can advance with f5. Black would be doing fine in this position. On the next video, I'm going to be looking at a game which I played in this line.